over here. Those are yours, and these I'll need back. So the staple copies I need back. I don't have enough for everybody. Yeah. And this is actually part of your chapter, so you'll be. You'll have to. Oops, sorry. You have to share with your neighbors. I have 2 extra. Somebody help me here with that. To watch this for me. All right. Welcome to the next portion of our class, which is persuasion. So one thing I want you to pay attention here is that you've reached a major milestone in this class. By completing the first project, it is more likely that you're going to finish this class. Now, this class has been particularly good about staying intact, getting through the assignments. This is not typical. In my other classes, I'm having large drops in them, especially in the online classes. So making it to this point is pretty common for people to retake this class a few times in order to get through it, just because of this first assignment. Getting through the first assignment, it's a barrier. And for me, I think it's more of a mental barrier when I think of it, and I see what you're able to do by the end of the class. But regardless of how we look at it, it's a barrier that I see in these classes, and we should take a moment to just celebrate this accomplishment. Thank you. I appreciate that. This has been a really rough week. It's been rough all day. So here what I'm going to do. I've changed things up just a little bit. Where from my previous terms, I have actually had this as part of the last portion that we talked about in persuasion. But instead, I'm flipping this over to the first part because I want you to start thinking about your topics and also how arguments are in, let's say, the media presented for your particular topics. Now, there's some things that I want you to consider. With all the things that are out there, there may be somebody that you agree with, but they go about it all wrong. And they may create more dissent among people, meaning that they're not going to like the topic just because of the way it's presented. So for the basics, and we'll go into more details about persuasion, but for the basics, what is persuasion?
Trying to something to you, or go into a topic that you're talking about.
Okay, so and you may already agree with that person, so it may be a source of reinforcement. But basically what we want is we want people to agree with us, and if they already agree with us, we want them to be advocates for our position. And there are ways to do this, and some of the ways that this is done are ways that aren't very ethical, so this is also a part of ethics that will start blending in here. So what are some of the unethical approaches to getting people to do what we want them to do? Or what do we see? I'm not saying you do that, but what do we see here? Slander. And what? Manipulation. Okay, good. What else do we see? These are good.
Bad information.
Bad information, misinformation, misleading information, twisted information. Thank you.
False information.
And what?
False information.
False information. Okay, this quiet group in the back over here.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Yeah.
I love that. You know, that's a reality that we're dealing with. And it's a problem because there are things that are worthy causes. And so one of the frustrating things that you may see is just like, yeah, I agree with this point of view and I want this thing to go through. I want this to go through, but the person that is arguing on this behalf are doing things that are causing more issues. So this is where we start looking at ethics, and this is where we start looking at fallacies. Fallacies, has anybody heard this before, maybe in another class? Sociology, very good. What about like a logic class? Philosophy. Philosophy goes through this in detail. So what are fallacies? Who's ready to go?
No, that's just what I came up with.
What did you say?
Flaws within the logic or reasoning of an argument.
Flaws within the logic or reasoning of an argument. A lot of times we know when there's a fallacy in front of us from a gut reaction. Something doesn't seem right. So let's take a look at what fallacies are, and we'll look at a few examples. And then I want you to be focused on your topics and where you see fallacies within your topics. So first of all, they can be highly unethical. Those are the things that are what we talked about in this class. The misinformation, the manipulation. Okay, it's a lot better to get people to come on your side because they chose to do that, rather than trying to force them or manipulate them. It causes many more problems, as we can see in some certain topics in our culture today. The other thing is they can be entertaining. So some commercials are just funny, where we know that it's just flawed in reasoning. The Geico commercials are a really good example. They're just funny, they're silly, they have nothing to do with insurance. The other ones we were talking about in my other classes were the Mayhem commercials. Yeah, they're funny, and we know that that is an exaggeration. So we can enjoy these. What I want you to be able to do is to really know when they're in front of you, because the truth is we can't stop it. We can call people out on it, but we can't stop the fallacies from happening. What I want is every single person that goes through my class to be able to distinguish when there's a fallacy and to be able to make those decisions on your own. We're not supposed to be telling you what to think. We're supposed to be giving you the tools to help you distinguish these things and make these decisions for what is right or wrong on your own. So that's the purpose of this, of putting this in the forefront of this lecture on, before we get into logical arguments. So let's take a look at some of them. I've adapted this. I used your book, and then I had some other books that I referenced here from previous public speaking classes. And a lot of these names, they're similar. They mean the same thing, but they're packaged in different names. So you can see them here in this gray sheet here, and this is for you to look and analyze. So the first one, and it's not necessarily the first. Once you start seeing one fallacy, you'll start to see several other fallacies within one example. But misplaced or false authority. Okay, what does that mean? Somebody's saying something, you're like, how would you even know that?
Maybe like someone like a commercial uses like a old historical person, like say they use the product. Like say like Abraham Lincoln used like this or a sock or something like that.
Abraham Lincoln Nike. And that's one of those examples where it's funny, because we know that's not, even, Abe Lincoln says you have to be careful about the internet. So we can see this in a funny way, but we also see this used in a serious way. Like backing up a political campaign where you don't know anything about and you may even assume that the person that is supporting, let's say, this candidate may not know that much about politics. We can't assume that. That's not where their specialty is at. Or the illusion of authority. An individual that comes in wearing a white coat and says, I prescribe this to my patients, but they're an actor, is the illusion of authority. So this is very common where we take somebody that we like a lot and they're asked to represent something for the benefit of something else, like a company or a product or a political campaign. It's okay if we support those things, but just make sure it isn't because of that reason. So that's one the very first one, but now let's just start adding on to these. Questionable cause. I did well on this test because I wore my lucky jeans. So I have to make sure that whatever I do, next time I take a test, I wear my lucky jeans. Okay, what's the problem with that? Okay, so we know what clear cause and effect, so misusing cause and effect is what we look at. Now there's some other things that we have to look at closely. For example, you know, Subway did this for a long time. They used to claim that they were the reason why people could lose weight. Okay, was it because of Subway? Or is there a different cause and effect?
Well, I mean, they're choosing Subway over less healthier foods, but they're probably also choosing a healthy lifestyle over living healthy. So it may have slightly contributed, but not really. Unless you're eating a salad and a lot of bread.
So here we have, so but let's just look at this. If somebody wants to lose weight, what do they have to do?
Go to the gym. All right, go on a diet.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it has to do with nutrition, moving more. It has to do with calories in, calories out. That's what we're looking at. So for a company to take credit for this, or some magic pill to take credit for this, that's a questionable cause.
What did they use that one year?
The one that was in prison?
Yeah.
Jared?
Jared, yeah.
Jared, yeah, he would hold up those pants.
Yeah, because he would walk, well, he was eating a 6-cent sandwich and he was walking like 3 miles to get there, so of course you're gonna burn the calories you put in.
So Jared, actually, and I don't know if everybody remembers that commercial with Jared.
What?
Here we have not only a questionable cause, but also a misplaced authority. So here we have, you know, he wasn't a nutritionist. In fact, he had a really bad reputation by the end of it. So we're looking at this, and you know, so let's look at other celebrities that we've used. If we take a look at Olympians, first thing they do when we have an Olympian, sponsorships. Okay, and those sponsorships are usually something that has nothing to do with the sport. So eating Wheaties does not make an Olympian champion. Okay, it's hard work and dedication. Okay, and then the moment that they, and we're also going to look at misplaced authority, the moment that they misstep somewhere in the community or they get arrested, Phelps is a big one, you know, then people start pulling their sponsorships, which is completely unrelated. So the cause and effect doesn't even make sense. Okay, why is he an Olympic swimmer? What put him there? Training, yeah. Training, dedication.
My high school had that won the gold medal, and Kia used them for like commercials. Like they would like, I can't remember, there's a commercial like where all 4 of them hopped in the car, and took off, and they all got free Kias. Out of it, it was pretty sweet.
Wow. Okay, and again, that's a good example, you know, of misplaced authority and questionable cause. Because, well, maybe the car got them there, you know, but I'm sure that other cars can get you there. So very good example. So now we're starting to see this in our lives personally. So this is a big one. Your book talks about this. This is basic schoolyard name calling right here. Get into a fight with someone. Okay, let's call this official. It's a debate. We're in a debate. And next thing you know, somebody calls you a name, and maybe add some cuss words in there too. Okay, what's the first thing that you want to do?
Throw hands.
me. So here we have this reaction. This is one of those things where we really have to stay cool with our emotions in these situations, because this is what is happening all the time. You start looking at news feeds. In fact, I've stopped looking at news feeds because they're just so bad. But lots of personal attacks that have nothing to do with the issue. So when you have a personal attack, the first thing that we want to do is fight back, and if I'm ugly, then you're uglier, and then you go in this big long fight, and we're going down this other road. And what's happened to the people that are watching us? What are they thinking?
They pull their phones out and start recording.
Okay, it becomes entertainment.
Yeah.
Rather than really, what is this issue about? And then people lose track of what the issue is, because you're caught up in some fight that has nothing to do with the issue at hand. It's really hard to get a handle of yourself once you start losing that composure, and that's the best thing you can do. I may be the ugliest, dumbest person in the world, but that's not really what the issue is here. Well, maybe it is, but that's not what we're talking about. So this is something that can happen, and if we come down here, it's actually a type of red herring. So I know some of you have had classes in this. Who knows what is a red herring? Fantastic. Can you tell us? It's a distraction. So a distraction from what is supposed to be happening. So anything that distracts you from the issue, and that's one way to do it, is to throw in a personal attack. Usually the people that are doing that are the individuals that feel like they're losing the argument, losing ground. And so it seems to be an easy way to kind of get people to focus on them. So a red herring, yes, distraction. But you can do red herrings with other things besides a personal attack. So for example, if we were to talk about an issue, let's say that your tuition is going to raise double by next year. Okay, that would be something that you'd want to have a discussion about with someone. So let's say that I'm the person. Ooh, he's pretty knuckles over here. So here we have a discussion happening, and if I were to say, well, I think really you should be focusing on this issue that your books are very expensive. You're paying more for your books than you are for each class. So if you really want to get down to where some of the problems are, let's take a look at what's happening with your books and the publishers. They're the enemies. Okay, now I've muddied this argument. Okay, now you're not sure what to argue about. Is it this or that? That's exactly what I want. Because maybe I'm in charge of tuition costs. And so it's a lot easier for me to distract you with a red herring. Okay, it's a dirty trick. Because probably that other thing needs to be addressed as well. So fact versus opinion. How many of you have heard of the word demagogue? Okay, you've heard of it, not quite sure what it means?
Yeah.
It's a fancy thing when somebody's calling someone out on fact versus opinion. It's an unethical speaker. Ah, you're a demagogue. Okay, it's also another way of saying personal attack too. But fact versus opinion means that this person is typically a very good public speaker, and they're using high emotions, but it's really their opinion rather than facts. So those fact checks are really important, and this is hard to get away from. This is why some conspiracy theories get so far away from ourselves, because it's believable with the expressions that this individual is using. So be really careful. If you find yourself thinking, my gosh, I can't believe that's happening. That is so awful. I never knew this world was such a terrible place until I listened to somebody that was very convincing. Okay, well, is this person really using facts? Or maybe they're using their own personal experience and saying, everybody knows that this is happening. So be careful with demagogues, fact versus opinion. Straw man. This one is a tricky one. I'm sure a couple of you have heard of the straw man fallacy. Do we know what it is? All right, so and if you ever decide to watch a news feed, you'll see straw man used all the time. I don't encourage it, but just in case. So straw man is, let's say that there's an argument that somebody's making, and Chris will say that you have a good argument, but what I'll do is, we talked about misrepresentation. I'll be like, so what you're saying, and I'll say something different. And then and it'll be a weak argument, and I'll push it over like a straw man. And at that time you're like, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. This one's a tough one to get through. So we see this in political debates. Okay, we know what bandwagon is. Okay, what's the problem with bandwagon? Everybody's doing it. The majority of people do this. It's fine, right. Okay, do we have any historical examples where people jumped on the bandwagon? Witch hunt. Witch hunts, very good. Okay, oppression of people, that's a really good example. Okay, slavery. These are things that are morally clearly wrong. What Hitler was doing, okay, that's bandwagon. So yes, it is possible that large groups of people can be wrong. Ethics are at stake here, so pay attention to bandwagon. There's some things that it doesn't really matter, but there's some things we really need to make these decisions on our own. Hasty generalization. The story of one does not complete the story, is not everything. Jump to conclusions too quickly. Okay, this is a misuse of what's called inductive reasoning. And we'll talk about inductive reasoning more when we get into specific argument strategies. But what it means is there's not enough information to come up with what's called an inferred conclusion. If a detective were collecting, let's say, evidence on a crime scene, and there was a lot of pressure to say, who done it? Okay, this detective may make the mistake, not have enough information, and come up with a hasty generalization. That's a big mistake. So you have to have enough evidence in order to come up with what's called an inference. As we come down here, you can start to see, of course, these examples start overlapping with each other. So post hoc, if you don't do this, bad things will happen. We can also look at this with either or, so sometimes these two start to merge into each other. So think of, there's all kinds of things in post hoc. Chain letters, Facebook copy and pasting. You have to do this whole thing, or I know somebody, we're going to move over here, I know somebody that this happened, and next thing you know, they were dead. Or, God won't love you, or whatever it is. There's all kinds of issues, very superstitious here. And then when we're looking at either or reasoning, dealing a lot with problem solution, it's not recognizing that there is more than one solution out there. So here, basically what it's saying is either you're with this thing or you're in a terrible, terrible person. Either you spend the price of a cup of coffee to donate to this cause every day. We all have something, that special thing, whether it's a soda or coffee or a cup of tea. And that's all we're asking from you. And if you don't do this, all the children are going to starve to death. And it's up to you to make this change. See, so what's it going to be? Children starving? No, or not, because you decided to donate. So the other thing where you can see this high pressure sales. Yes, the moment you leave, because my manager's going to come back. Okay, car sales comes to mind like this. How many of you have been caught up in a high pressure sales? I know, right? Did it work?
No.
Good.
I I did I'm a broke college student.
Good, did it work for you? Did it-
No, I just left. I got
Good.
mad and I walked away. They kept arguing and I was like, because it's like, it was a car I was looking at, oh, it'll only be $600 a month. And I was like, what the, no. Well, what about $595? And it was just, yeah, like, just kept, I was like, I'm still leaving now.
Yeah, did they call back?
Oh, yeah, several times.
It's amazing how that changes. So, yeah, the high pressure sale, these are really bad, unethical tactics. As we move to the slippery slope, that means that, you know, if one bad thing happens, it's the beginning of the end. Okay, so you better watch out. You know, there's this one sign here, and it's just gonna, in just a matter of time, it's just complete failure. You just wait. It's fearful tactics. This is what it is. It's scaring people into doing things. And then the last one, there are so many more than this, but I just want you to be able to identify them. We've done this always. It works. Why would we change? Because it could actually be wrong. It could be inaccurate. It may have worked at the time. There may be different circumstances that could result in something different. Maybe it could be something that we improve. There's a lot of reasons to not appeal to tradition. Okay, so now that I've shared with you a couple of fallacies, I want you to start thinking about your topics. Okay, some of you have a clear problem solution. Some of you know that there's a need or that we should be doing something differently. But where are you seeing things where this is actually presented in a way that's with a fallacy or highly unethical? I'm going to give you a couple of examples here.
Is this like a new topic, or are we building off from our last?
You're building from your last one. So nobody changed their theme. We're just changing our viewpoint. Did I start you too long? Don't change it. Okay, so who knows what this is?
Isn't that, yeah.
Space shuttle.
Okay, yeah. And it's not doing so well.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah, this was
We should-
seventh grade, something like that, when this happened.
Was it when that one teacher got in there?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. No, I think it was eighth grade. When I was in eighth grade, so I remember all this, the excitement. It was really, really disturbing. You know, they have TV monitors up at the school, and unfortunately, it was one of the few, actually a lot of people didn't see it happen, but it was one of the few places where they actually had this. And they're like, so, the problem with this is there were people that knew there was a problem with an O-ring that wasn't testing to standards with certain temperatures. And they knew it was going to be cold that morning. So there was a group of people that tried to stop this from happening. Highly unethical problem. Lots of case studies on this. And the rebuttal was, we've flown this 19 times. Okay, why would this all of a sudden not work? Different circumstance. So an appeal to tradition happened. That was one of many things. There were other things that were happening that were causing issues. Groupthink was a big part of it. You know, this one kind of cracks me up because, okay, who was this guy? Okay, and why is he so great? So he's a stud.
See him in concert, he's a
Okay, okay. All right. He's a great musician. Okay, what is this for? And what is proactive? Acne medication. Okay, so how old is he?